Hello and welcome to the 21st episode of the PHP e-commerce series. My name is Curtis and this is Free Skills. Well, I'm here in the back end of the site, or the admin area of the site, and I've added a few more products since I deleted my database in the last video. And I also went ahead and did my extra credit homework that's archived, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to use it. So I deleted some of these products here, and now if I go to archived, I can see them there, and then I just have this restore button here that restores them, and then they're back in the products. So that's kind of all I was talking about doing, is having a place for us to look at products that have been that we want to archive. Now we're going to get started in this video with our user registration or admin login, and I think it's going to take about 4, possibly 5 videos to get through it. So it's kind of a big section, but once we get through it, I think you'll like what we do. Now there are plenty of things that we can add to this user registration system. This is going to be pretty basic, but I think it'll suffice in teaching, kind of how this works. So the first thing that we need to do is we actually need to add, I'm here at the PHP MyAdmin in our database, and we actually need to add a table to our database. So I'm going to go ahead and click New, and I'm going to add 3 more columns to this because I need 7. And the first column is just going to be ID, and that's going to be an integer, and we're going to set that as an auto increment, and for the index we're going to put that as a primary index. Okay, like I said, 99% of the time when you set up a table, you're going to do that. Alright, the next thing that we want is we're going to make a field called full name, and I'm just going to set that as a varchar and put it at 255 characters, and then we're going to do email, and again we'll do a varchar on that, and I'll just set that to 255, although 155 or something like that should work as well. So let's just put it 175 to be safe. Password, we're going to use a varchar on that as well, and this one we're going to put at 255. Now generally with passwords, a lot of times you'll limit this, so say your password is going to be 60 characters. We're going to do 255, and I'll explain later why. The next thing that I want to do is keep track of the date that they joined, or that they were added to the system. So I'm just put join date, and for this we're going to pick date time, and then I'm going to set a default to this, and I'm going to put current timestamp. And what that's going to do is when an entry is inserted in the database, it's just going to automatically put the current date and time in there, so we don't really need to tell it that when we're inserting fields, much like the ID. Alright, the next thing I want to keep track of is last login, and that's also going to be a date time. And so when someone logs in, we'll update this to that current time. So we're not going to put a default in there. The last one that we're going to do is permissions. And I'll go ahead and use a varchar on that and put it at 255. If you need more than 255 characters for this, you may want to set this to text. But I think for my system, this is going to work just fine for now. Alright, so once I have that set up, I'm just going to hit go. Oops, wrong go. I'm going to hit save. Of course, I didn't give this table a name, so this table is just going to be called users. I'm going to hit save. Okay, so now we have our users table. If I click on that, you can see our structure here. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to insert our first user manually into the database. But in order to do that, we have to talk a little bit about passwords, because you don't want to store a password unhashed or just directly in the database. That's a security issue, and so you want to store it as a hashed password. Now there are a few built-in functions that we could use, but they're not very secure. For instance, we have MD5 and SHA1. Those used to be fine, but people have figured out how to decrypt those so that actually your passwords aren't safe storing them simply as an MD5 or SHA1. Luckily, with newer versions of PHP, there's a lot better options, and it used to be a lot more complex, but the way that I'm going to show is pretty straightforward. So before we add a user in our database, we need to grab a password. So the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and jump into our code here, and in our admin area we're going to add a new file. We're going to call that file login.php. Now in login, I'm going to go ahead first and copy from our products page just our head and our init and the opening PHP tag there. And then I'm going to go down a few lines, close PHP, and then I'm going to go down a few more lines, and I'm going to go ahead and include our footer. So includes /footer.php, and we'll close that PHP tag. Alright, so let's go ahead and just navigate to the login.php here. So there we go. We're not going to include we're not going to include any kind of navigation or header up at top on this page. So we'll just have our footer. And so what we can do now is talk a little bit about this hash. What I'm going to do is just temporarily create a variable I'm going to call password. And inside that I'm just going to put the word password. And that's going to be our password. I'm not going to put my password here for you guys to see. But I'm just going to put password here. I would encourage you to go ahead and put the password you want to use here. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a variable called hashed. And what we're going to do is we're going to use password underscore hash, and that is a pre-built PHP function. Now the first parameter that this gets is what we want to hash, which is our password. The next parameter that we have to put here is what type of encryption we're going to do. Now what I'm going to do is just put password default there, and then I'm going to echo, oops, I'm going to go ahead and echo hashed. Alright, so let's go back to the front end and refresh here. And you can see that I get this long string of gibberish. And this is the sort of thing that we want to store in a database instead of just the word password, where anybody who gets access to it can figure it out. Now what's really cool about this function is that if I refresh the page, you'll notice that it changes. So what this means is that if multiple people in the database have the same password, chances are, a very good chance, that they are not going to be the same in the database even. So it makes it very hard to figure out what it is. Now this string here has a couple different things. It's made up of 3 parts, and the first, I think from here to here, something like that, is basically the type of encryption that it's using, and then from there to this period, I believe, is a salt. Now a salt is a random string, and you can use your own salt if you want with this, but I encourage you, until you learn more about security and learn what you're doing, to just go ahead and allow this function to create a salt for you. And then the salt is used when encrypting the rest of the password. So since the salt changes every time you refresh, so does the password. So I'm just going to grab one of these, and it doesn't matter which one, but I need to make sure I get the whole thing. And I'm going to copy that. So now we have a hashed password, and the password is just password. So you'll use whatever you want. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and insert a new row. We're not going to put anything in the ID, but I'm just going to put my name here. And in the email, do curtis@freeskills.com, which is not a real deal. And then here in the password, I'm going to paste that as plain text, and here is our stored password. I'm not going to do anything with join date or last login. Actually, with the last login, I'll go ahead and pick, why not, we'll just pick today's date. So today for me is, we'll just say it's the 18th, which it's not, it's the 22nd. So let's just put that there. Okay, and then the permissions, the way that we're going to do permissions on this site, and you can do this in a lot of different ways, but I'm just going to do a comma separated deal. So I'm going to give myself admin permissions and editor permissions. Now that's just what I'm choosing to call these. You can do as many levels as you want. Just separate them by comma. And for me, admin's going to be like a super user. They can do everything. An editor is going to be more like an employee who may add products to the site, but I'm not going to give them, you know, the ability to add new users or delete users or anything like that. So that's what I'm going to add there. I'm just going to put an admin and editor for myself, and I'm going to hit go. And now if I hit browse, we have one person, me, in the database in the users table. Alright, so now that we have that, I can go back to the code now, and we can just go ahead and delete all of this. We don't need that right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to start building out our form. And what I want to do here is we're going to make a div, okay? We're going to give it an ID equal to login form. Alright. I'm not going to use Bootstrap for this. I'll show you why. I'm just going to do a little something different for whatever reason. Alright, so then what I want to do is I'm going to put I'm just going to put a blank div right here, and I'll show you why later. Then I'm going to do our H2 tags like we normally do, and I'm going to put this text, give it a class of text center. Okay, and then in here I'm going to say login, and then we'll do HR tag. Alright, the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and add our form, and our action is just going to equal this page, so login.php. For a method, we're going to use post. Alright, and then for let's go ahead and close our form tag here. Alright, and then we'll use a div with a class of form group. Okay, and then I'm going to make a label here for we'll put email. By the way, I chose to use email and password for this instead of username and password because emails have to be unique anyway, so that kind of takes care of, you know, wondering if there are more than one. There shouldn't be more than one user in the database with the same email. Okay, so that just kind of helps with that. Alright, and then I'm going to put an input, and for type we're going to go ahead and use email, which I'm probably going to turn that back to text later. For some older browsers that will default back to text, but email has some like built-in email validation stuff that can be avoided, so you'll want to test for that on the server side as well, but that's just kind of a nice new feature of HTML5. Alright, so then I'm going to give it a name of email and an ID of email and a class equal to form control, and then we'll give it a value, and we'll give that value email. Oops. Well, we'll need to echo email out here. Alright, so that's it. I'm going to copy this whole div and copy that down, and now change this to password, and then each one of these we're going to change to password as well, even type so that the characters are hidden, and we'll make this password. Alright, so then what we want to do is we'll create one more div with a class equal to form group. Right, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to do another input, and we're going to do type equals submit, and then we'll do value, and we'll just say login. Alright, The next thing that I'm going to do here is just down here under our form, I'm going to put in a paragraph tag here. Okay, and inside of this paragraph tag, I'm going to give this a class equal to text right, and then inside that paragraph, I'm going to create an anchor, and we're just going to put / the name of your project here, so / tutorial index.php for our href, and then alt, we'll put home. Alright, and then I'm just going to go put a link to visit site right there. So let's take a look at that and see what that looks like. Alright, so we got a form here. We got a visit site that will take us back to the front end of the site here. So then there we go. So actually I need to go to login.php. Now what I want to do is just a little bit of styling here, and so what I'm going to do is open up our CSS and our main.css, and down here at the bottom of the CSS file I'm just going to target my login form, and what I want to do is give this a width of 50%. I'm going to give it a height of 60%. I'm going to give it a border, and I'm going to give it a 2 pixel solid black border. I'm going to give it a border radius, and I'm just going to do we'll try 7, 15, and then for color I'm going to use RGBA. I'm going to make this black and make it a 0.6 for transparency, or the opacity there. What else do I need? We need a margin, and for margin on this, for the top and bottom, I think I'm going to use 8% and then auto so that it's centered on the page. And then what I'm going to do is give it some padding, and I'm going to say for padding I'm going to give it 15 pixels all the way around. So let's just take a look at that and see what that does. Login form. So let me just inspect this. I might have to clear my cache here. There we go. So clear the cache. It's looking okay. It's not perfect. But let's go ahead and do a couple more things here. So I did this wrong. This was actually not supposed to be border radius. That actually needs to be box shadow. I don't know why I put that, but we are going to do a border radius, so kind of mix those two together. And I'm going to make it 15 pixels. Okay. Let's take a look at that now. There you go. That's looking a little better. The next thing that I want to do with this is I'm going to give it a background color. I'm going to give it a background color of white. Now, it's not going to look any different right now because it just won't look any different just yet. So let me try 7% here on this margin. See if I can get rid of the scroll bar. There we are. There we go. And just to give this a little bit of I want to give this a little bit of styling so you kind of know it's this site. And so, but in order to do that, instead of doing it on the CSS, I'm going to go ahead and up here, I'm just going to put some style tags here. Okay. In my style tags, I'm just going to target the body, and I'm going to give it a background image and URL. Now the image that I want to use is, let's look at our images. We're just going to go to our header logo, and I'm going to use the background.png there. So that what I want to do here is do /tutorial or your root folder, and then I'm going to do /images /header logo /background.png. So let's take a look at that. Alright, so it's getting close. The next thing that I want to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and do background size, and I'm going to do 100 view width for the width and 100 view height for the height. Alright, so there we go. Now if I resize this, it looks to be a little bit responsive. But there we go. Now you can kind of tell it's meant for this site. It's not beautiful, but it's just a little bit of styling. Okay, so I'm not gonna. You can work longer on making it beautiful if you'd like. This is just what I'm gonna do. One thing I am gonna do is go ahead and style this button a little bit. Since we have the Bootstrap styles here, all you have to do is on this submit input, give it a class. We'll give it a class of button and button primary. Go ahead, give it a blue button. There we go. Looks a little better. Alright, so now we gotta take care of a few of these undefined variables here. This is the same thing as this, by the way. It's just a password field. So let's go ahead and take care of that, and all we need to do to take care of that is here in the top of the PHP tags, we're just going to go ahead and say email is equal, and we'll do a ternary operator here, and we're going to say if is set $_post email. Okay, if that's set, then we're going to set this equal to sanitize. Always make sure you're escaping user input. So we'll sanitize $_post email. Okay, and then if not, we're just going to give that an empty string. Make it equal to an empty string. And I'm going to copy all of this here. We'll do the same thing for password. And password. There we go. So now that'll take care of those undefined variables there. Alright. So what I want to do is, and this is going to seem a little bit strange, but right here in this blank div, I want to put some more PHP here. And the reason I'm doing it there is because when there's an error, I want the errors to print out right here. So I'm going to go ahead and give me some room here, and I'm going to open some PHP tags. I'm going to go down a few lines and close them, so I don't forget to close them. Now here, what I want to do is start form validation. So we're going to check if $_post. So if post, so if the submit button is pushed, then we're going to do something in here. And what we're going to do is form validation. Alright. So the first thing that I want to check is if either one of these are left empty. So what we can do is we can just do an if statement. Which, by the way, before we get too far, up here at the top, we need to go ahead and set errors equal to an empty array here. There we go. So then here, back in form validation, we're going to say if, and we're going to say if dollar underscore, actually we'll just do if empty dollar underscore post email, or empty dollar underscore post password, then we're going to add to the errors array, you must provide email and password. Okay. So what I'm going to do is within this now, I'm just going to go down a few lines. We're going to do our form validation up here, but I'm going to say check error for errors. So we'll go ahead and take care of this now so we can see this error. And we're going to say if not empty, and this is what we've done before, if not empty the errors array. So if that's not empty, what I want to do is echo display errors, and we're going to pass it in our errors array. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look now. If I just hit login, then we get this error, you must provide email and password. If I fill in one, you can see that this isn't a valid email, and this is at front end. This is coming from right here in this type email. So just so we can practice, I'm going to change that back to text for now, and we'll change that back to email in a little bit. But if I put something in both these fields now, well, I need to refresh the page. Hang on a second. Alright. So now if I put something in both of them, I don't get that error. So we have stuff in both of these. The next thing that we want to check for in our form validation is we want to check if the user exists in our database. Okay, if the user doesn't exist, or if the user doesn't exist in our database, the email address, there's no reason to check anything else. So check if email exists in the database. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to put I'm just going to put a query here. I'll make that equal to db query, and inside of here we're going to say select star or select all from users where email is equal to email. Okay. The other thing that we're going to do, because sometimes people copy and paste, or they might accidentally put a space at the end or beginning. I'm going to go ahead and trim both of these. So for this, we're going to say email equals trim email. And what that's going to do is just remove blank space at the beginning or end. We'll do the same thing for password as well. Password is equal to trim password. We could have easily put trim right here and trimmed all of this, but these lines are getting a little bit, with it being a ternary operator, it just looks a little cleaner in my opinion to put them below. So you can do that, it's just fine. Alright, create a user, and we'll just say user equals my SQLi fetch a sock, and then we're going to say query. Alright, so then what we can do is we can count this user right here. It's good that we have this. We need this for the password as well. But what we need to do also now is put, let's just call it user count is equal to, and we'll say MySQLi num rows, and we'll pass that in the query. So now we can echo out user count. Refresh the page here. And what I'm hoping to see is 1. Yep, there's a 1 there. So now if I change this and we just do that, we get 0. And so that means there's 0 users in our database with that email address. But if I finish this out, then it's just 1. So that's what we want. So we can do our check now, and we could say if user count is less than 1, or if it's 0, you can say, doesn't matter which way you want to do there. We're going to add to the errors array. We're going to make that equal to that email doesn't exist in our database. Okay. So now if I take that away, hit go, it says that user doesn't exist in our database. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this echo user count. We don't need that anymore. What might be smart to check as well, we want to go ahead and validate this email address, and validate email. And what we want to do is say if not filter var, and we're going to say email, and for our second parameter we're going to put filter validate email. Okay, and that's not a string, that's a constant. It's built in already. So if not filter var, so that if it's not a correct email, or if it's not a validating email, we want to give it an errors message here, and we're going to say you must enter a valid email. Okay, so let's go and try that out, and I'm just going to put some gibberish here. Alright, so you must provide an email and a password, because I didn't put both. You must enter a valid email, and that email doesn't exist in our database. Okay, so there we go. The next thing that I want to check, and I'll do this above our check if the email exists in database, is I want to make sure password is more than 6 characters. Okay, that's really easy as well. So we're going to do if if string length of password, if that is less than 6, okay, then we're going to give it an add to the errors array, and I'm going to say password must be at least 6 characters. Okay. So now if I put in a valid email address and just a few characters here, this validated, but now I only had 3 characters here, so it says password must be at least 6 characters. And we'll go ahead and add a period there just for consistency. Alright, so what other validation do we have to do? Well, we need to go ahead and create our hashed password, and then we need to verify that the password matches that in our database. If all of that happens, then we'll go ahead and log the user in. So right here we'll just do an else statement, and we'll just put a comment here to log user in. Alright, so we're not actually going to do that in this video, we're just going to finish form validation. But right here underneath password, I'm going to say hashed equals, and we're going to do the same thing we did earlier with password underscore hash, and then we'll pass it in our password, and then we're going to say give it password default. Alright, now that we have that hash password, what we can do is right here under check if emails exist, because we have this user here, we can say if not password verify. Now password verify is a pre-built PHP function that goes hand in hand with password hash. And all you have to do is give it two parameters. The first parameter is the password that they entered. So I'm just going to put password here. The next password that we need to check is, and actually I'm very sorry, I didn't need to add this up here. We don't need this hashed here in this file, because what's going to happen is we're going to compare this with the database. And in order to do that, we have our user array that we created right here, and we can say password. So what it's going to do is it's going to hash this password and check if it matches with this. And then since I said if it doesn't, then we're going to do this. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is add to the errors array, and we'll say the password does not match our records. Please try again. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill out the form now, and let's give it the correct credentials. So we'll do Curtis at Free Skills, and then for password, I'm just going to mess up my password on purpose. And then it says that the password does not match our records. Please try again. But if I give it the correct password, which was just password, no message shows up. And in fact, what we could do just to check this is right here after this login, I'm going to put echo log user in. That's where we're going to put the logic to actually log someone in. So if I do that again, it says log user in. So that's it for this video. We've created, I'm going to leave this for now, we'll get rid of that in the next video, but we have created our login form, we have validated the form, we've added a user table to our database, and we've learned about password hashing and why you always need to hash your passwords. I would encourage you to do some more independent study on password protection and hashing, and just you'll read all kinds of different opinions out there and all of that, and that's all a good thing. So if you don't agree with the way I did it, you can do it your own way. That's totally fine. I've just found that this is a very quick and reliable way to bang out this really quickly. So I mean, you can see it's 79 lines of code, barely, and we have this user. Now the next thing that I noticed though here is that we do have this little space here, so let's fix that. So what we're going to do here is do background attachment fixed. Okay, so I refresh the page now. Even if I scroll, this can scroll and the background image does not, so we don't have to worry about the repeat. We got all these errors here, that's fine. So now if I Curtis at Free Skills, enter my password, log user in, which we don't want that to happen, obviously. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this video. I will see you in the next video, and in the next video we're going to continue with this login system. We're going to talk about sessions, and we're going to actually create our functions to log a user in, and we're going to create our functions to check if a user's logged in and then if they have permission to access a page. And then in the following video after that, we're going to go ahead and create our form that allows us to add users to the database. And then what we're going to do in our last video with the user authentication part is we're going to give them the ability to change their password and to log out. So for a few videos we'll only be able to log in. I may change my mind on that, and if we have time in the next video, maybe we'll do the log out feature. It's super quick. But I will see you in the next video. If you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe, or just do one of those, whatever you like. If you have problems, you can feel free to message me or post it in the comments. Maybe another user will help you, or I'll get to helping you myself. Alright, well, have a wonderful night.